It's just a workbench. Hi, I'm Buddy Lindsay, and this is Lindsay Acres Farm. Let's go ahead and build a new workbench. This is a project that's been a long time coming because the workbench I was using was great, but I just kind of outgrew it and I needed something bigger, especially for future projects. One of the key things is I wanted to make sure it was big enough, and I also wanted it to look good too. And so I was trying to combat strength, style, and size all in one. A couple of the key features is there's going to be built on 2 pedestals, one on each end, and it's going to be connected by an apron. And then underneath the center is going to be a shop vac so that I can clean up stuff around, and it is a good place to storage. The idea is I want to build the 2 pedestals in a way so that we can later on add any cabinets and other storage opportunities, but this at least gets everything started. One of the core concepts is I wanted this thing to be portable and strong, so in order to accomplish that, I'm going to go with half-lap joinery and also put it on some casters, but that wasn't exactly my first choice on the mobileness to it, and you'll find out more about that as we move through. And let's be honest, what's a good woodworking project without a whole bunch of mistakes? So stay tuned and you will see not only the build of this, but a bunch of the mistakes that I made as well. So let's get started. So I decided to pull out the joiner because doing it with the belt sander was just taking forever. I wasn't really liking the results. And I mean, it was gonna be like another couple of hours to get everything done with the pace I was going at. The jointer is faster. You know, again, the biggest issue is the taper that you get. For some reason, one of the beds isn't quite right, and I'm having a hard time figuring out which side the bed is off on to produce a taper. So to get around that, my goal is to only do 2 or 3 passes per side at most, because I'm not taking a lot off, because it doesn't need a lot off. So what I'm doing to compensate for the taper is I am basically running it through and then I'm spinning the board 180. So when I taper it, it should taper on both sides. And since, again, I'm not doing a lot of, since I'm not taking off a lot, then it should compensate fairly well. And I'm not exactly trying to get like a perfect 90, but this should help get a better 90 degree on those boards. I do think it's working out well, and we will see how it goes with the rest of the project.
One eternity later.
All right, so we're finally able to get back to the workbench. We got the legs cut, and we have two things that we need to do now. One, we need to trim these down. These need to be 30 inches, and then we also need to basically do a whole bunch of cuts to get everything in place to do the cross pieces here and cross pieces here, lots of dado cuts. But before that, we need to trim down all the cross pieces so that they no longer have the rounded edge, similar to what we did with the planer on these. So let's get started on planing down some 2x4s. And then once we get that, we can start on these. Okay, so one of the issues I have is these are been here for a long time. I started this project in February. It's now August. So if you look, this has gotten some twist in it. So really this isn't a good candidate for what I need to do. I have two of these like this. So we're gonna go ahead and look for straight ones. I mean, it's mostly good in this case. Two of these need to be really good because they're gonna be the long ends, but everything else doesn't have to be all that great because I can chop it up. Okay, there's scorpions on here. So we got these boards planed down. Hopefully I did enough. I had a lot of problems with the planer. Had to use the dust collector a lot, tear everything apart. But we got these planed down and we're ready to move on to the next step. The next step is this part here. We got to go ahead and get these uprights. We got to get those to all the same length. I overbuilt those so that we could trim them down to have the exact same length on everything. Trying to get a little more precision, especially after a glue up. The next part is we got these cutouts here, here, and here. And we're building two of these sections, so we have to make sure to get everything lined out right. And so that's going to be the next thing. Once we get these figured out and done, we can go ahead and cut down these lengths, which is just kind of a standardized length. The only one that I'm really concerned about is this piece. No, actually this piece, because it fits kind of in between and could get a little funky, but we'll see. So let's get started with the uprights. So this is a standard 2x4, so it's about 3.5 inches long, which for the most part is at the top of this delve square. It goes pretty good. So in this case, for this board, it's actually a little short, but say for this board, the delve square is actually a little proud of this. So like it's pretty much right on. Again, this is a workbench for my shop here, so I'm not trying to get perfect. For the sake of this workbench, I'm just trying to make it better than some of the other stuff that I've made, trying a few new techniques. And so in this case, and I've been working on this thing for 6 months. I need to get it done. So in this case, like this delve square, I think is a good indicator of how much down I want to go on cutting a dado. I'll get a little more exact when it comes to the width, but we'll come to that here in a second. So the question is, on the top of this, how am I going to figure out how much to go down? Do I take this board, and and that's really what I should do. I should take every board that I intend to use and cut that line. So that's what we're gonna do. One option I could do is use this delve square and then use this right angle tool and really just meet them up. And this is at a 90 degree. We're at the correct distance from here. So we should just be able to scribe a line and that work. Actually, let's experiment. So let's scribe the line. So there we go. So that should work. Let's not grab the one that's proud, but a different one. And we're gonna measure that up. Gets pretty darn exact. Looking at it, it's just this side right here, this board is a little proud of this, which could actually be a good thing on this because I can sand it down. The top of the table is gonna go on this. It allows for a tighter, probably better looking fit on here. So if we go for the other one, let's go with this one. Let's line it up. And well, that's actually a little bit proud too. Interesting. Okay, so this roll over here, so this isn't like perfectly flat on all sides. Like I do have a little bit of the roll of the 2x4, and this seems to be a little bit proud just like that other one. So it actually might not be a bad fit to go ahead and do that on the different boards that I want to do. So the thing I need to keep in mind is I have these four and that four. I'm making two pedestals, and then we're going to bridge them with a 2x4 and the tabletop itself. In the center is going to go the shop vac, or one of my shop vacs, and then the other are a start to cabinets later on down the road. So what I really want to do is I want to lay out these boards kind of similar to what the layout would be whenever I actually stand them up, and then I want to make sure I mark them properly. All over it so that I'm not getting lost as to what board is what when I cut it. So let's go ahead and see what that marking up is going to look like. So what I've done at this point is I've measured up 6 inches to here and basically done a line all the way up. Next part I need to go up here, and I've got this line in, but all I'm doing is measuring off of using basically one of the boards that I'll use, lining it up across the bottom, and then I will scribe a line across the top. So I'm using the width of an actual board that I'll use instead of trying to rely on, instead of trying to rely on measuring it with a tape measure or ruler, because this is going to be more accurate than an exact measurement from the ruler, which would be great. I mean, that'll be precise, but for that measurement. But sometimes wood is not an exact measurement. So if we use the wood that we're going to use, we'll get a better line and we'll cut better. Never done this before, so done something like this before, so some of it's learning. If this all turns out to crap in the end, I'll have learned stuff, and I'll know how to apply it next time. So, not like crazy concerned. So now I'm cutting down the side here so that I know. So we have this section here that's going to be cut out, but then here I have another side that's going to be the side that goes to over here. So I need to make sure to get this measured out. I'm not going to cut one down. I'm not going to do a line here because it doesn't matter. So then the other thing is we'll just mark this area so we know that, hey, we're going to cut this out. So I did these two measured up properly to make sure I got it there. So since I'm going, it's because I'm going to have a board that goes this direction. Now I've got a board going this direction. So I need to do that same measurement on this side. So actually marked this side but didn't mark this side, which actually makes sense because it was on the inside. So we'll go ahead and mark this one. Mark this one. All right, now let's hope these lines match up. Okay, so this is the front, this is the back. Oh man. Okay, I'm trying to make sure I get all these marks. It's kind of on the frustrating side, because it's like, what? Okay. All right, back. Okay. So if I'm looking at this direction, let's flip these because I'm gonna get this wrong too if I'm not careful. Okay. Okay. Front side going, we're gonna have it go this direction. So, and then it's going to come on this side. So I need to do here. And I need to do this way. I think this, I'm going to be honest, I don't know how well this is going to turn out. Something's off with all that time. Because if I line up these two marks here, I mean, it's different angle-ish, 1/16 of an inch off. Like, I just do not know. Okay, we're just gonna go with it, and then we'll just have to force it, I think, for this set of legs. Okay, this one pretty much lined up perfectly. Right height. I mean, this is level down here. Like, came out pretty darn perfect. Okay, so this is actually in that under groove there. So this is going to be a tight one. I might either need to hit it in with a mallet or hit it with, just sneak up on the cut, which either or both are going to need to happen. So it's a good selection. So yeah, I mean, good mark there. I think we're good on this. I think this one's going to be a good one. Steps like these that, you know, get you a little bit closer to finer woodworking. I'm not the quality yet for fine woodworking, but I am at better than crap woodworking level. See, this is off here, like, just ever so, like, things are just, I don't understand. Like, there's a lot of stuff on here that's just like ever so slightly off. And so I have to be doing my measurements wrong somewhere and with something. Like, a tool that I have just is not good enough. Or well, more like it, I am not good enough with the measuring tool yet. It's actually, what am I doing? See, I mean, that lines up great. A little bit of real talk moment. Over the next few minutes, you're about to see the result of all of this. But somewhere, I'm doing something wrong. My measurements are just ever so slightly off in a lot of areas. I don't know if it's just me using the measuring tools wrong. I don't know if it's the surface of the workbench. I don't know if it's bad pencil usage. I don't know if it's bad cuts previously. Or in all reality, it's probably a large combination of all of those together. So join me on the next little bit as I put all of this together, and we will see how it turns out. But I'm expecting a lot of little problems. I guess that always happens in woodworking projects, but I was hoping this would be better. So let's see how it goes. We'll talk for a second about these legs, the markings that I did, and then how to cut them with the dado stack to basically hog out a bunch of wood. Basically what I did is I marked out where we're going to be, and then I kind of did this little pattern over it just to scratch out, hey, that's what we're going to cut. That part is going to go down on the table saw. From there, we're going to have this side here, here, and here as well. So we're only going to have a chunk right here out that's going to be there, but the rest of this is going to be gone. And then also in a spot here, yeah, I put a line here that connects to the line over there. And what you do, or what you can do, is you can just make marks around the other side of what you're going to line up on the saw blade, and you'll just line up that mark on the saw blade. And let me show you that. So this is a little bit goofy, and I felt weird the first time I did it. But in this case, we have this section that we want to cut out. So what we'll do, so this is the area that we want to cut out. So in this case, I'll take my delve square. I'll find that line that I want to cut, and then I will make another mark. Because again, I want this here to go down. Fold this down, take my miter gauge, we'll put it up here, and then now I know that everything inside of here is going to be what we cut out. So I'll go to this line, but okay. So then I'll take this tip right here on this saw blade, I'm gonna get, okay, on this one, and I will line that up on as directly on that line as possible, preferably right on it. So it looks like on here we're going to be at 27 1/16 of an inch, if I'm looking at that right. I mean, if that's the case, I kind of have a decision to make. Do I go ahead and make the depth of the table an extra 1/16 of an inch long, or do I go ahead and adjust the actual table saw, miter saw, to be able to come in that 1/16 of an inch? The implications is I need to cut this board here an extra 1/16 of an inch because it goes the same direction as that one. This is kind of one of those times where you just reassess what you're doing. The other thing is this top piece is going to have to be an extra 1/16 of an inch long. However, there is a little bit of a difference in this case, because what we'll do is once this whole thing is built, the top will actually measure what the final actual width, depth, and length is going to be, so that we know exactly what to cut the top of it to be. So it's kind of like a what do you do situation. Thinking about it, I think I'm just going to go ahead and add that extra 1/16 of an inch down here to this bottom one and call it a day. And we're just going to double check the measurements for the top and for some of the other stuff, and I think it's going to adjust out just fine. Plus, it's really only a 1/16 of an inch. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, I didn't really screw this up. All right, we have everything trimmed down to size. I have 2 sets for the different pillars that I want to do, and then I have the main front and back on the upper support part. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of build the sides first, and on one on each side, get it glued up here on the table, screwed in. I also am wanting to use a dowel for part of it, and you'll see what I want to do there because I don't want any visible screws on the outside. So let's go ahead and move one of these over and get started on the first one. Okay, so this is going to be a side piece. The actual front of and the back of the table saw or the workbench is going to be here. So we want to connect the smaller piece is going to go up here. The second smaller or the middle piece size-wise is going to be here, and then this piece is going to go like that. So we're really only concerned about these parts right here for the moment. So let's go ahead and get this laid out. One of the things that I want to do is I want to go ahead and take this side. This is going to sit down in this right here. I want to go ahead and mark on here where it's going to come over here, so I can go ahead and pre-drill the holes. That way that's one less step I have to do in the big middle of everything. So we'll do that. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's really good enough because we're going to go inside the middle here. You kind of just pick a spot. If you want a pattern, you can do a pattern of some sort. If not, you don't have to. I'm going to try to do fairly straight center. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not after perfection on this thing. Kind of, in this case, since I'm trying to figure out what I want it to look like as I go, I'm just kind of making it up. I think it'll look okay. There, now we have those holes. We're just gonna roughly line it up here, and then make a couple marks. And then we're just gonna do the same thing. I thought about flipping it over, as you probably just saw, and marking it based on that side. However, since this is gonna connect over here, I wanna make sure I mark it with the appropriate one. So we got marks over there. We're ready to start our holes. Give it a go. One thing to really take into consideration also is we're going to have screws going in this way into here, right here. So what we're going to need to do is make sure when we have our outer piece here go on that we don't interfere with these screw holes. So something to keep in mind as you're building. So now we know what we want hole-wise here. And what I want to also do is do these dowels inside. I want to screw it all the way through because I'm going to use screws to screw it in and secure it along with glue. But then I want to cap it off with a dowel. So the next thing we want to do is we want to drill the larger holes probably halfway through. And based on that, I did a test board to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I marked it off with tape on the drill. So it only goes about halfway through, as you can see there. And it also, this kind of point there will help it sink in. So we're going to go ahead and do all of these next. I'm not 100% sure what size I should use. I mean, this does fit in there snugly, but part of me had thought maybe go one step down and maybe do like a 15-30 second, so that way there's more snugness. I don't know. This is a learning experience. That's why I'm doing it this way, is so that I can get the experience on this workbench versus on something that's a little more critical. So that one grabbed poorly, so that might have a little openness. Also, I would probably do this on a drill press under other circumstances. It chunked out that there, something to be careful about. So that'll probably, if I do anything with it, I'll fill in with putty and then sand over it. But I probably won't do anything about it. So I tried an experiment. On these I did slow. This one I went a little fast. And it's still, like, I mean, it still turned out pretty decent. I'm probably gonna have to hammer it in, which is probably fine. Maybe. I don't know, we'll find out. Okay, this is gonna be a bit of a tight fit, so we're gonna go ahead and do our glue in here, and then we're gonna shove it in there, do this on both sides. I'll show you one side, we basically replicate on the other. So I tested up here and that feels roughly the same. So we're gonna go ahead and secure this in place. Okay, this is a little off, but I don't exactly know how I can fix it for sure. I'll just have to sand it down. Okay, just go with that. So we'll go ahead and drill this hole into the other board so we get a better connection and it doesn't split when we go through. All right, so we got that side. Yeah, this is proud, pretty good. So dados didn't work out 100%, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll sand some of this down. It'll look better in the end. So we really want to make sure that we're good up here and we aren't sticking way out. This board's sticking way out. This thing is cocked in here a little bit. I'm not sure there's a lot I can do about it per se, but we'll make sure this is behind that point as good as we can. And then we're gonna have to adjust that in manually, so we're gonna go ahead and drill this out. Okay. We're gonna glue and glue. That's gonna leak out pretty good. So the nice thing is this is going to help strengthen it because it's going to go up into the end grain of the dowel. It's also going to connect to the rest of it and swell it. So not only do we have the screws attaching it to hold everything in, but this is going to be kind of a permanent seal. That ain't coming out unless you drill it out. So this is my old workbench. This is my new workbench. I don't know if you see a problem. I don't know how I'm going to solve this. It's 2 3/4 inches different, shorter than this. Man, did I? 2 feet 6 inches. So 2 feet 6 inches. So I had planned to do some removable wheels from Rockler so it would have a strong base and not roll around. I just go put the things on, hit them up, they stand up and you roll. That's what I did wrong. I figured it out. So I measured from the bottom of here and not the bottom of here. So these are, yeah, that's like 2.5 inches. So that's what I did wrong. I measured the wrong parts. Oh my gosh. What I really should have done is I should have measured from the ground up to figure out what I did. I don't know what I was thinking when I designed this. I did the measurements, but I measured the wrong thing on this workbench. All right. It's frustrating. But you know what? We're going to figure it out. In the meantime, I'm going to build the other parts of these because, I mean, they're already done, they're already cut, and we'll figure out what to do next. Wow, that worked well. I'm going to need to work on my technique because I was kind of digging into the rest of it, but that worked well. Wow, look at that. Just out of curiosity, let's run a sander across that. See how that cleans up. that. Check that out. That's pretty nice. It can do some more cleanup, but that's pretty good. So, because this isn't 100% good, it's kind of overhanging that a little, so do a little trimming here. To securely fasten the workbench apron across both pedestals, I'll begin by positioning the board to ensure the pedestals are at the correct distance apart. Next, I'll mark the locations where I need to create the screw hole so I can get a strong connection. To prepare for the screws, I'll drill pilot holes carefully, and for the dowel plugs, I'll switch to a Forstner bit, which is something I probably should have used before, and I found it worked exceptionally well for this purpose, and I'll definitely consider using it from the get-go in the future. With all the prep work complete, it's time to apply some wood glue and secure the boards in place with screws. So I'm back after about 3 hours of sanding. I used 40 grit sandpaper over the entire thing, and it's turning out pretty good. I'm not really going to worry about doing any kind of higher numbers just because I don't need to. Like, this is Workbench, and I think it'll be good enough. And so now we're ready to move on to the next thing, and that is to fix the height issue. I'm actually going to go ahead with some casters on here and put casters on all the legs. And the reason I'm doing that is because they give a little bit, so they're going to help make up for some of the oddness in the height and kind of how it angles in, and it should help solve some of the problems. So let's get this flipped over and get the casters on, and then we'll move on to the tabletop because that is the next thing, and that's going to be an interesting thing to get done. There we go. That tightens it down. I don't know if I need that washer there, but I've always been taught to add a washer. I don't think I necessarily need one. I might try that on the next one to see how it goes. So with that, I think the base is basically done, and we're ready to work on the top and get it topped off, and then we can actually use the thing to work on the next project. Okay, we're ready to work on the top. Kind of the strategy we're going to do is we're going to overcut the size of the plywood a little bit on each side, on all four sides. We're going to do 2 sheets. I have 2 sheets of plywood back here. We're going to cut, and then we're going to do then we're going to take a router and we're going to trim it the exact size that we need after we laminate the 2 pieces of plywood together. So our next step is to cut 2 pieces of plywood and laminate together. Then we'll worry about how to attach it and attaching it, and then work on some trim work and final sanding. So let's get going. The interesting thing is, while for the most part, like, I haven't been paying too much attention to square, when I measure corner to corner here, like this, it actually comes out to, this is 98 13/16. And then when I measure this one, it is 99 exactly. So it is 3/16 off from being perfectly square, which is pretty awesome. That means that from that corner to that corner, there's only 3/16 give in a sense. And so if we were to say add an extra 1/4 of an inch, that should be plenty to overhang each side. when I measure from here to here, I get 29 and 7/16. In this spot, 29 and 7/16. And then I do a couple more spots over here, 29 and 7/16, and 29 and 7/16. So if I go lengthwise here or widthwise here, if I do, let's see, we're 29 7/16. So let's say we go to 29 and 3/4. I should have a couple of extra 16ths on each side, an 1/8 on each side, and we should be good. The other interesting part is if we'll measure this way, we will be at 94 and a half, 94 and 9/16. 94 and a half, 94 and slightly under a half. Well, 94 and a half in that spot there. Yeah. So these boards are 94 and a half, so we know that. So the only thing is this is bowed out a little either on this side or that side. So if we can do 94 and say 3/4 again, we should have a little over a 1/8 of an inch of excess that we need to worry about. So when we attach it, we can square it off and make sure everything is even. This is kind of a precise cut, and so I don't know if I want to go more or less, but I need to be super careful. I think I'm pretty confident in doing to 3/4, doing 29 and 3/4 for the sides. I don't know if I want to go, I think I might want to go a little more, maybe go to 90, man, I don't know. So if I go to 95, that's an extra 1/2 inch. I mean, that's a lot of extra. I mean, that's a 1/4 inch on each side extra. However, I can take the track saw and cut that down again if I want to refine that a little more. Because that would be a lot of extra for a router bit. I mean, I even feel like, so let's say I did this, so we're at 90, no, we're at 29 and a half, and let's say I want to do that. I mean, I feel like even what I'm wanting to do is a little much for a router bit, especially doing 2 pieces of plywood. But I do want to be too much rather than too little, because I can slowly whittle it down. So I think what I'll do is do a 95 length, because these are 96, it's only cutting an inch off on here. And then I think I'll do a 29 3/4 for the width. So I wanted to bring that to you. I know it's a long discussion of measuring, but I kind of wanted to think it through. I wanted to bring you along for that, because sometimes you just got to sit there and think about it and plan. And that's exactly what we did. So with that in mind, we know our measurements. Let's get cutting. All right, so I got the other board, but weirdly enough, like, I thought I did the exact same measurement, all the exact same steps, and like everything in the world, it didn't come out the exact same. Like, this is like, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch different, like all the way down through here. Maybe more, I don't know. It's definitely more of an exact fit with what's down here, but it's still totally off. Even the top here, like the length is slightly off, even though it's better by a decent amount. So I don't know. What I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna trim it. I hadn't planned on trimming it anyway until after this is glued together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and glue this together, and what I'm gonna do is put the smaller end, this end, down, so that I have a tighter fit of the top when I go to trim it, and then when I put the outer trim on, it should cover it up and hopefully never notice a difference. So yet one more mistake that I get to try to solve. So we have all this glued down. I forgot to hit record during the actual process, but I have all this weight on here, have clamps all the way around the corner. I don't know how this is gonna go, we will see. But now I'm just gonna let it dry overnight, and tomorrow we'll flip it over and see what we're gonna do for the next steps. All right, this dried overnight, and I actually had some time to think about what happened on the differences of the top and the bottom piece. And I think what it is I should have measured out to 29 3/4, but I'm pretty sure I only measured out to 29.5 inches. And then I went a little bit over that just to kind of be safe. And I think in the end, yeah, because this is 29.5 exactly on there. 29.5 exactly. So that's what happened. That's why this was off. It makes a lot more sense as to what went wrong. And hopefully, it shouldn't be too big of a deal when we flip it over and do other stuff. So let's get this uncovered and take a look at what we have. I think this is looking good. Need to clean it off. I am going to sand off all the glue, excess glue in over the areas. And then we're gonna flip this over and let's figure out how we're gonna attach this thing. The nice thing is this is getting closer. The downside is this is the better looking side to be able to do the tabletop on. But now it's kind of not because of the width, so we'll just move on. This is definitely heavy. Ah! Woo! So with these two boards, this is about 1.5 inches thick. I don't have a big enough flush trim bit, and so I ordered another one. Hopefully it'll be here soon. In the meantime, I am going to flush trim this off. So this is kind of overhanging on the bottom, and so I'm just going to flush trim this top piece to be even with this bottom piece because it fits pretty well along the whole side. I've got to sand the top here to make this nicer, but I also got to figure out how to secure it. I think what I'm going to end up doing is pocket holes because this is plywood and it should be pretty stable. All right, so we're going to do a pocket hole jig. This is roughly 1.25 inches thick or to 1.5 inches. Kind of doesn't really matter, especially with the R3 pocket jig. So in this case, we're going to adjust it on back. There's little points here where you mark it and say, hey, this is 1/4 inch thick. So we're going to go 1.25 inch thick. And then this will just kind of hang on here. And then we will do a clamp in here. Just like that. And then we also have the drill bit that goes with it. And down here, there's actually inside of the case for the R3 pocket hole jig, there's an adjustment for this ring here so that you can set it for a 1.25 inch thick board or 1.5 inch thick. And then once we get that set, we'll just be able to drill through and it'll be a perfect hole so that it easily goes into the wood. So let's go ahead and drill a hole. There we go, and it's just that easy. To be honest, I'm not sure how many pocket holes to drill, so I'm going to do 2 per square section. So 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, same thing over there, 2 on the sides, and I'll probably do 2 on the inside of this one here. No, actually, Yeah, I'll do 2 on the inside. One of the considerations that I'm trying to go through is I want this to be removable. Yeah, because and one of the things that I've done is I've prepped this so that I can put shelves inside of it and build this out as a cabinet underneath. But as long as I can reach up in there and get to it, I should be fine. So yeah, I'll do the inside here, inside here, inside and inside, and do 2 per. That should give plenty of pulling it down onto the base. So we will see how that goes, and hopefully after that it'll be secured in place pretty well, and we'll be ready to do some flush trim bit on it, and then be able to put some final trim, do some sanding, and then the project will be done after we do a finish. Currently there's a little bit of, I don't know, warpage, like it's just not flat as I would like it. So I need to add some clamps onto here. So that's what I'm currently doing. So I make sure I get a good flat connection so that when I go to do the pocket holes, it's getting as, you know, the top is as tight to the base as it can be, and we'll be able to screw it in and keep it securely and very well down. I think this is going to work out pretty well. Just takes a little extra effort. I'm trying to go through the extra effort and the extra problems in order to make this work well, so that this can be a good long-term workbench. I mean, I think it's going to be bulky and it's going to be heavy duty, and that's exactly what I want. So there's a lot here to trim. So I'm going to try something I see other woodworkers do. I'm going to attempt to take my track saw and do a perfect run across it. I do not intend to get all the way across this part, but just trim it down a lot so that when I do get the flush trim bit for the router going, it's a lot less work for the router bit. Since one side is a little uneven to the other side, not exactly square, I'm basically trying to eyesight this. I did a little bit of measuring, and this should be good. We will see. I already checked my plunge depth. That should be good. Double check the line up one more time. I mean, I think we should be good. I'm gonna go with my normal excuse. It's just a workbench. Check that out. That was pretty good. I mean, that's pretty good right there. I like that. And here we are. The workbench is done. I didn't show you the last little bit, which was basically 5-6 hours of sanding and doing polyurethane on top, because that's kind of boring. So let's go ahead and take a look at this thing. If you'll notice, first off, we have the trim, and it is flushed fairly well against the plywood, leaving a nice seamless transition. I did a chamfer across the trim so that it has a nice roll off of it whenever you touch it. If you'll look where all of the screws go connecting everything together, it has those dowels in place. And on the bottom, I only did 1 coat of polyurethane, but on the top I did about 4 so that I could get a good solid base on it. For the most part, it's a solid build and it rolls really well. It has 8 wheels on it and each one can lock, and for the most part it's probably going to stay in this location in the shop, but it does have the option to move around whenever I have bigger projects that I need to take care of. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a couple of the mistakes. The first mistake here is the wood was just too big whenever I was pounding in trying to get it in on the leg, and I ended up splitting a 2x4 as you can see in this location. And if you look into several of the locations, you can see there is some separation wherever the laps would be, and we just didn't get a good tight fit in those locations. That's not necessarily unusual in this case, but it is something that took place. So if you look at the trim down the side, you can see that the mistake of the size of the board that I cut is basically hidden. You can't tell that there's kind of a shelf on the inside for the top piece of plywood over the bottom piece of plywood. It kind of fits pretty darn well. From a height perspective, I actually think it actually maybe worked out a little bit better. It comes right up to my waist and I have a little bit higher area to work on. A lot of stuff that I've seen, you maybe want to have it a little bit lower, but the couple of things that I've done on this over the last couple of days, I've really liked this height a lot. So I'm actually glad that that mistake ended up making it a little higher. And again, it was a mistake, but in the end, it looks like it was designed this particular way. So the final mistake I want to talk about is on the ends here and in the pedestal and what happened. I actually not exactly sure. I only recorded part of this, and then in part of the part that I got recorded, the audio wasn't working. So I want to explain something that happened that turned out to not be a big deal in the end, but caused me some problems and caused a lot of headaches for putting in the boards. So on these boards here to there, I'm sitting to the side, this side from here to here should have actually, no, sorry, not this side, this side. This right here is actually angled like an A. I'm just going to exaggerate, it's like that. So this point here and to this point here is actually wider than this point here to this point here. Something that happened in the design process is I did not take into account for how much thinner that these boards were going to be whenever I ran them through the planer, and so I designed everything, and this board was cut too small. So if you remember in the beginning, about the middle of the video, I was concerned about this board. What I ended up doing is being like, oh, this is going to work out just fine, and I went ahead and cut the measurement that was in my plans that I didn't take account for. So what I should have done is I should have gone with my gut, ignored doing this board here, set these in place, then measured between what I needed so that I could actually get the right measurement. Because as it is, I had to set everything up and then basically break it, quote unquote. I had to squeeze it in to be able to screw these in place and get it to work properly. In the end, everything else worked out fine. It wasn't that big of a move. I think it was only about a half of an inch on the worst one that it had to actually come in. But that is a kind of a bigger mistake that I made in this project, and I wanted to call it out and talk about it a little bit. So with all that, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making this, and it's going to be used in a lot of future projects on a lot of different things. And I want you to join me in future videos as I build other things. If you've enjoyed it, give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe so that you know when new content like this workbench comes out. In the meantime, happy DIYing.